They always told me that big transformations take years, maybe even decades. They said building a six-figure income requires climbing ladders, waiting your turn, grinding endlessly while the system chews you up and spits you out. But I'm here to tell you, that's a lie sold to the masses. The truth? You can engineer a six-figure transformation in just half a year. Not by chance. Not by luck. But by design. And the first step has nothing to do with business, strategy, or marketing. The first step begins with rewiring the one asset you've carried since birth, your mind. Because here's what most don't understand. Every six-figure transformation you see is 80% mental architecture and only 20% tactical execution. The world feeds you tactics. The algorithms push quick hacks. But the ones who actually cross the invisible barrier? They build something inside first. A psychological compound that changes how they operate in every environment. You've seen it. The person who moves into a room and somehow the energy shifts. The person who starts a venture and momentum bends in their favor. The person who seems lucky, but underneath is simply operating from a completely different operating system. That's what we're going to build. In the first 2 weeks, I didn't build a business. I didn't chase clients. I sat in absolute ruthless assessment of my mental patterns. I wrote down every self-imposed rule I was living under. Rules I didn't even realize I was following. Rules like, I need permission. I must first be qualified. It's risky to start fast. I should wait for better timing. These rules are invisible chains. They operate silently while convincing you they're protecting you. But what they're really doing is freezing you in the middle class of execution. The six-figure transformation starts when you break every single one of those chains, one by one. I created a system I call the permissionless frame. Every day, for 1 hour, I would challenge one limiting rule. Out loud. I'd write the rule down. I'd ask, who gave me this rule? Why do I still obey it? Who benefits if I keep obeying it? What would happen if I simply declared it invalid? And in the quiet of those daily confrontations, I began dissolving decades of mental noise. That noise is what keeps most people trapped. They think they need a better strategy. They don't. They need silence. They need clarity. And once the noise is gone, you begin to see windows of opportunity everywhere that were always there, but filtered out by your old narrative. The second foundational shift came from designing what I now call the compound skill stack. Most people try to master one skill and hope it's enough. But in today's world, you need to stack 3 to 5 highly leverageable skills that amplify each other. Not random skills. Complementary weapons. I chose mine with surgical precision. For me, it was persuasive writing, emotional communication, audience building, monetization psychology, and offer design. When you combine those 5, you don't just sell, you create gravitational pull in the market. You attract, convert, and retain without shouting. Your presence becomes magnetic. And the most beautiful part, none of these require massive startup capital. They require understanding human nature. Something most ignore while chasing algorithms. Week 3 to 6 was about building what I call the asymmetric offer. Most people sell what everyone else sells: services, courses, products, coaching. That's fine. But it's not enough to break into 6 figures fast. You need to construct offers that give you disproportionate leverage, where the market perceives high value, but your delivery costs remain minimal. I dissected hundreds of high-income operators during those weeks. I studied how they constructed value ladders that allowed them to charge $500, $1,000, even $5,000 without needing thousands of customers. It was never about volume. It was about perception of transformation. I learned to package my skill stack into outcomes people craved, not services they could find elsewhere. By week 7, I initiated the audience ignition phase. Too many wait for perfect branding, logos, websites. They waste weeks perfecting packaging while their window of momentum closes. I took the opposite approach. I launched messy. I spoke directly into pain points. I published content daily that made my audience feel exposed, not because I attacked them, but because I articulated their private frustrations better than they could themselves. This built instant resonance. My content wasn't viral. It didn't need to be. It was surgical. Designed to attract 100 hyper-relevant people who deeply resonated with my message. Because you don't need thousands to start a six-figure machine. You need the first 100 that trust you enough to buy. Momentum compounds fast when trust builds fast. That's why by week 8, I transitioned into the pre-sale engine. Instead of waiting for perfection, I built products live with my audience. I offered early access, beta pricing, limited founder rounds. This did two things simultaneously. It validated demand while funding further development. Money came in before products were even finished. Confidence skyrocketed. The psychological gap between zero and your first revenue is the most dangerous in the journey. Once you break it early, you move differently. You execute aggressively. You no longer operate from fear of loss, you operate from proof of process. Week 9 through 12 was about constructing the scalable delivery system. This is where most fail. They overpromise and burn out trying to fulfill. I designed delivery models that allowed scale without sacrificing client results. Hybrid models combining self-paced content, live coaching touchpoints, community-based accountability. The outcome? Clients succeeded while I preserved bandwidth. Six-figure operators understand, scale is not about volume, it's about systems that create consistent transformation with minimal friction. And as I crossed the 12-week mark, something profound happened. The identity shift was complete. I was no longer trying to build a six-figure business. I had become a six-figure operator. There's a difference. One chases money. The other simply operates inside systems that produce it automatically. My mornings were now strategic planning sessions, not desperate marketing scrambles. My weeks were structured, not reactive. My confidence was rooted in data, not hope. But perhaps the most critical shift came in my relationship to time. Early on, I thought speed was my advantage. But real power came from time compression mechanics. I built daily structures that compressed years of skill development into weeks. How? Ruthless focus. Zero distractions. Monastic work blocks. Real mentorship feedback loops. No consumption without execution. Every book, podcast, or course I consumed was immediately followed by implementation. No theory stacking. Just immediate friction with the market. The faster you execute what you learn, the faster you build data-driven certainty. By month 4, revenue stabilized. By month 5, growth accelerated. By month 6, the six-figure mark wasn't some distant milestone, it was my new normal operating base. But what I realized at that point is what separates the transient six-figure earners from the permanent ones. Most hit it once and regress. The few who sustain it understand that this entire game is one of controlled simplicity. Complexity is seductive, but simplicity scales. I doubled down on my core offer, refined my audience targeting, and tightened my delivery system. I wasn't chasing new, shiny tactics. I was refining what already worked. This is where most sabotage themselves. They hit six figures and immediately get distracted. New offers, new platforms, unnecessary expansion. I did the opposite. I eliminated anything that didn't directly drive acquisition, delivery, or retention. I measured my business against one equation: how many people am I helping transform? How predictably? How profitably? Everything else was noise. By the end of month 6, I sat in a place few understand. Not because I'm special, but because I executed a blueprint most ignore. A blueprint rooted in psychology, not hustle. In systems, not motivation. In data, not emotion. In skill stacking, not scattered tactics. And that's why I tell you, a six-figure transformation in half a year is not only possible, it's predictable when engineered properly. But it demands that you become ruthless in your thinking, disciplined in your execution, and detached from every false rule society conditioned you to follow. And now, as we move into part 2, I'm going to take you inside the invisible mechanics most never see. The deeper psychological frames that control why some scale effortlessly while others grind endlessly with minimal results. Because if you master these unseen levers, six figures becomes a byproduct. The real game you'll enter is wealth architecture at scale. The world worships tactics, swipe files, templates, step-by-step formulas. But tactics alone are powerless if the operator's psychology is weak. I learned very early that what separates a six-figure operator from the perpetual strugglers is not simply what they do, but how they think before doing. There's an invisible operating system running underneath every decision, every risk calculation, every move. Most never reprogram it. They stay trapped in surface-level execution. But to compress years into months, you must reconstruct your mental OS into what I call the operator frame. The operator frame is not about motivation. It's about mental precision. It's how high-performance individuals remove emotion from execution while amplifying speed and accuracy. You see, your brain is constantly negotiating with itself. Every action passes through layers of internal friction, self-doubt, procrastination, uncertainty, fear of judgment. What the average person does is try to overpower these emotions with willpower. But willpower fatigues. Discipline fluctuates. Eventually, emotion wins. The operator frame doesn't attempt to overpower emotion. It rewires the conversation entirely. Inside this frame, I run every decision through a singular lens. What produces signal? What produces noise? Signal is any action that generates real data, market response, client feedback, sales, conversions. Noise is any activity that feels productive but produces zero feedback loops. Reading more books is noise unless immediately implemented. Endless logo design revisions? Noise. Debating business models without testing offers? Noise. The operator ruthlessly prunes noise and aggressively pursues signal. The faster you collect signal, the faster you calibrate your system. The faster you calibrate, the faster you scale. At this stage of my journey, I realized that most businesses fail not from bad products, but from feedback starvation. They're starving for market data because they hide behind busy work. I designed every week to contain rapid microtests. New offers, pricing models, messaging variations. Not months of planning. Days of testing. If an idea couldn't be validated or invalidated within 72 hours, it was shelved. This velocity of iteration allowed me to cross what I call the calibration threshold, that invisible point where the business begins feeding you clarity instead of consuming your energy. As clarity increased, I confronted one of the most counterintuitive shifts of the six-figure journey. The less I did, the more revenue I generated. This violates everything we've been taught about hard work. In school, more hours meant more grades. In jobs, more output meant more promotions. But in entrepreneurship, the leverage curve flips. Once your offer, audience, and delivery align, every extra task dilutes focus rather than amplifies growth. My job shifted from doing more to eliminating friction, simplifying onboarding processes, refining customer journeys, optimizing back-end systems, and most critically, engineering my own calendar ruthlessly. I built what I now call the unbreakable work rhythm. My days were divided into high-intensity creation blocks and low-intensity recovery zones. Creation blocks were 90-minute sprints, completely isolated from distraction. Phone off, browser tabs closed, notifications silenced. In those sprints, I produced sales copy, recorded training modules, mapped client onboarding flows. No meetings. No reactive work. Just output. The average entrepreneur wastes 4 to 5 hours daily in partial work states, scrolling, checking, switching tabs. I eliminated that entirely. My actual work hours shrank while my production 10x ED. During recovery zones, I disconnected fully, but not randomly. My downtime was engineered for cognitive restoration, walks, physical training, journaling, strategic thinking. The recovery wasn't indulgence, it was investment in decision quality. Because when you're building rapidly, your primary asset isn't time, it's decision fatigue. The faster you scale, the more critical decisions stack. And every low-quality decision compounds into operational drag. My recovery protocols protected my ability to make high-consequence calls daily without degradation. Now, as my business crossed into the consistent 5-figure months, a new enemy appeared: opportunity distraction. The market started sending me noise disguised as opportunities. Collaborations, joint ventures, new niches, shiny partnerships. Each one looked appealing. Each one threatened to fracture my simplicity. This is where most early 6-figure builders implode. They confuse activity with growth. I implemented what I call the fortress rule. Unless an opportunity directly amplified my core customer acquisition, delivery system, or retention model, it was a no. This allowed my operational simplicity to compound while others spiraled into complexity. My offer became sharper. My messaging became cleaner. My delivery system became scalable without sacrificing customer results. And critically, my emotional state stayed detached from short-term volatility. Because 6-figure growth isn't linear. Some months spike. Others stabilize. The weak operators panic during plateaus. The calibrated operators understand that consistency compounds like compound interest. During month 5, I made perhaps my most pivotal shift. I stopped seeing customers as transactions and started engineering what I now call the lifetime value engine. I stopped optimizing solely for front-end revenue and began constructing customer ascension paths, additional products, deeper support layers, scalable group programs. Every client interaction became not a sale, but a relationship expansion opportunity. This allowed revenue to multiply without needing constant new customer acquisition. My average customer value tripled while acquisition costs remained flat. 6-figure stability demands this shift from hunting to nurturing. And yet, even with operational stability, I confronted one final enemy most never prepare for: identity dissonance. As income grew, as lifestyle options expanded, as external validation increased, the temptation to self-sabotage appeared. This is the dark side of rapid transformation. Your old identity fights to pull you back. Subtle doubts emerge. Do I deserve this? What if it all collapses? Am I being too aggressive? This is where most unconsciously plateau. They revert back to their comfort income zone. To counter this, I engineered what I call the identity calibration loop. Every 30 days, I would sit for 2 hours and review 3 questions. 1. Where am I still operating from my old frame? 2. What limiting beliefs are trying to reattach? 3. What would a 7-figure operator do differently at this stage? This monthly recalibration ensured that my identity growth matched my revenue growth. Because no matter how good your tactics, your business will never sustainably outgrow your self-image. As I approached month 6, revenue wasn't the primary reward anymore. The real transformation was internal. I was operating from clarity, confidence, and calm urgency. I didn't need motivation because the systems produced momentum automatically. My days were lighter. My decisions were cleaner. My mind was quieter. And from this foundation, scaling further wasn't a matter of hope. It was simply adjusting the dials on a machine I had built intentionally. But as we enter part 3, I'll expose the deeper leverage systems that turn a 6-figure machine into a perpetual momentum engine, the exact mechanisms that allow some to double or triple their revenue without multiplying stress or hours. This is where real freedom is engineered. The average person believes that income grows by adding more effort. They picture scaling like stacking bricks: more hours, more clients, more calls, more hustle. But 6-figure transformations operate by a very different law. The top operators don't scale by addition, they scale by multiplication through leverage. Leverage is the silent force that allows one person to produce the output of 10. It's how the same 24 hours yield radically different outcomes depending on who controls them. And to engineer a six-figure transformation inside 6 months, you must master multiple layers of leverage simultaneously. The first layer is skill leverage. This is where most people mistakenly chase tactics instead of compounding skills. Tactics expire. Algorithms change. Platforms die. But skills that govern human behavior compound forever. Early in my journey, I identified the highest leverage skills in today's market: audience building, persuasive writing, offer creation, conversion psychology, and system design. Each skill, alone, is valuable. But combined, they create what I call the infinite leverage stack. Because when you can attract attention, convert trust into transactions, and deliver transformation predictably, you become unstoppable. Most people underestimate how fast these skills can develop under focused pressure. In 90 days, I compressed years of learning by constructing daily microdrills. For persuasive writing, I broke down viral posts sentence by sentence. For offer design, I deconstructed high-ticket sales pages nightly. For audience building, I reverse engineered how authority was manufactured online. This wasn't passive learning. This was active reverse engineering, followed by immediate application. The feedback loop was brutal but efficient. Within 3 months, my messaging was sharper than people who had been online for years. The second layer is system leverage. This is where you stop being the business and start building the machine. The trap most solopreneurs fall into is trying to manually operate every part of the business: fulfillment, marketing, customer service, admin. They become slaves to their own growth. I attacked this ruthlessly. Every process that repeated more than twice was documented, templated, and delegated. I built simple automations for email sequences, payment processing, onboarding workflows, and client follow-up. The goal wasn't perfection. The goal was consistency. The more systemized my backend became, the more mental bandwidth I preserved for the highest leverage activity: decision-making. I no longer wasted brainpower on trivial admin. My mind was fully invested in strategy, optimization, and customer outcomes. And with each system built, the business moved closer to operational autonomy, the point where revenue flows regardless of my minute-by-minute involvement. The third layer is audience leverage. Most people try to sell to everyone, hoping to catch anyone. I flipped this approach entirely. I went hyper-specific. I built my audience around a tightly defined persona, the high performer stuck between middle-class comfort and six-figure potential. My content spoke directly to their unspoken frustrations: the invisible ceiling, the fear of wasted years, the quiet urgency for freedom. Because when you speak to one specific person, you activate resonance. Resonance produces trust. And trust collapses sales cycles. Every post, every email, every video was engineered to create what I call pre-sold clients. By the time prospects entered my sales process, most had already decided to buy. They just needed to confirm details. This allowed my sales calls to shift from persuasion to qualification. I wasn't convincing. I was selecting. And because of that positioning, my close rates surpassed 80% within 4 months, while many still struggled at 10 to 20%. The fourth layer is offer leverage. This is where income transforms. The average offer competes on price. The leveraged offer competes on transformation. I engineered my flagship offer around outcomes, not deliverables. Clients weren't paying for hours or modules. They were investing in a new identity, a new skill set, and a new trajectory. This allowed premium pricing without resistance. My offer included layered support, structured curriculum, live Q&A, private accountability, and rapid feedback loops. The result? Higher client success rates, stronger testimonials, and more organic referrals. As retention improved, I added ascension pathways. Existing clients were offered advanced programs, mastermind groups, and strategic intensives. This increased lifetime customer value exponentially without needing constant front-end acquisition. Within 6 months, 40% of my revenue came from existing client ascension, a stability most overlook while endlessly chasing cold traffic. The fifth and most overlooked layer is reputation leverage. In the digital age, trust is currency. Every satisfied client becomes an amplifier. I actively collected video testimonials, screenshot wins, and documented case studies. But more than that, I engineered social proof engines. Private community spaces where clients shared wins publicly. Structured referral systems that rewarded advocacy. Strategic collaborations that borrowed authority from aligned influencers. My name became associated with predictable transformation, not through self-promotion, but through engineered narrative. By month 5, these 5 leverage layers converged into what I now call the compounding flywheel. Revenue was no longer linear. Each new customer produced more than just cash, they produced proof, referrals, content, and momentum. My acquisition costs dropped as inbound leads increased. My authority expanded. My system stabilized. My time freed up further. And most critically, my confidence transformed from reactive hope into quiet inevitability. But leverage comes with its own new danger, the complexity trap. As opportunities multiplied, as offers diversified, as audience size exploded, the temptation to overbuild appeared. Many who reach this stage destroy their momentum by chasing unnecessary complexity. More software. More funnels. More hires. I resisted that urge through one governing principle: simplicity scales. Complexity stalls. Instead of building out massive infrastructure, I doubled down on what already worked. I maintained one primary offer. I kept my content cadence consistent. I protected my calendar aggressively. I simplified payment structures. I refined onboarding flows. Every optimization served one purpose: to remove friction. Because friction, not competition, is the true killer of scale. By the end of month 6, I wasn't just operating a 6-figure business. I was controlling a self-perpetuating system that required minimal input for maximum output. My work week stabilized at 20 highly intentional hours. My income surpassed what I once believed would take years. And my mental bandwidth was clearer than it had ever been. But here's where most miss the real game. 6-figure transformations aren't about income, they're about control. Control over your time. Control over your options. Control over your direction. Because once you control those variables, the next stage, 7 figures, becomes a matter of strategic scaling, not blind hustle. And in part 4, I'll pull back the curtain on the final psychological and operational principles that allow some operators to ascend beyond 6 figures into full financial and lifestyle autonomy, without sacrificing health, family, or peace. Because real freedom isn't built through income. It's built through intelligent, principle-based scaling. Most entrepreneurs hit 6 figures and stall. Not because they run out of opportunities, but because they hit invisible ceilings they never anticipated. What got them here can't take them further. The workload that once built growth now threatens to burn them out. The strategies that once excited them now feel heavy. The calendar that once felt full of opportunity now feels like an endless obligation. This is where most stay trapped for years, chasing more clients, launching new offers, hiring random contractors, yet never feeling in control. But a few break through. A few scale smoothly to multiple 6 figures, then to 7, while their workload shrinks and peace expands. They don't work harder. They don't work longer. They scale differently. They shift from operator mode to architect mode. Let's break down how that transition works. Number 1. The architect mindset. The first mental shift is this: at 6 figures, you stop thinking like a worker. You stop even thinking like a business owner. You begin thinking like an architect of systems. Workers focus on doing. Business owners focus on managing. Architects focus on designing machines that do and manage automatically. At this level, every single activity you touch must serve one of 2 purposes. Build a machine, optimize a machine. If it does either, you're stealing hours from your future self. I asked myself one question daily. Is what I'm doing right now building something that works without me? If the answer was no, I stopped doing it or delegated it fast. Number 2. The rule of replication. The secret to architect-level growth is process replication. Anything that happens more than once should never be fully manual. If I coached a client and said something valuable, I recorded it. If a client asked a question, I documented both the question and answer. If I solved a technical issue, I screen recorded the fix. Over months, this created a self-updating knowledge base, automated onboarding libraries, FAQ systems that cut my client interaction time by 60%, SOPs, standard operating procedures, for every back-end task result. By month 7, 80% of my business could run without me ever being present. When a new client joined, they didn't wait on me to handhold. When a contractor joined, they didn't need long training. The system trained them. Number 3. The ascension ladder. Here's where true revenue scaling happens. You stop thinking in terms of front-end sales and start engineering lifetime client ascension. I designed my programs like this: entry offer, rapid transformation within 30 to 90 days. Core program, deeper mastery and system build out. Mastermind, high-level peer group, scaling advice, and access to me. Private advisory, limited spots, premium pricing. Each level fed the next. Each level increased LTV, lifetime value, without requiring fresh leads. By month 9, 60% of my revenue came from clients I already served. They wanted to stay because results stacked, clarity grew, and community reinforced growth. Number 4. The minimal team model. The biggest mistake I avoided: hiring big teams too early. A bloated team creates management headaches, cash flow pressure, emotional drama. Instead, I followed minimal team leverage. 1 strong operations manager, integrator. 1 flexible VA handling admin and tech. 1 sales assistant, contractors for specialized projects. Only this lean structure allowed massive revenue with minimal staff. Everyone worked inside clearly documented systems. Number 5. The strategic traffic flywheel. At 6 figures, I stopped obsessing over chasing viral views. Instead, I built evergreen traffic machines, SEO-optimized YouTube content, repurposed clips for short-form content, Reels, Shorts, TikTok. Weekly long-form email newsletter, evergreen lead magnets, organic search rankings via authority content. Traffic steadily fed my ecosystem, without daily ad spend. The goal was not virality. It was predictability. Number 6. The filtered client flow. As demand increased, I no longer spoke to every lead. I engineered a pre-qualification system, application forms, short video trainings, automated email sequences, filtering tire kickers. By the time someone reached a call, they were 90% ready. Close rates reached 85% plus because the wrong people never booked calls. Number 7. The identity shift. This final shift may be the most critical. I stopped seeing myself as the business. Most operators carry an unconscious ego attachment to being needed. Only I can deliver the result. Clients won't stay unless I handhold. I need to prove my value every week. Architects let go of that need. They design systems that deliver value without their constant touch. Freedom doesn't come from hiring more. Freedom comes from designing less dependency. Number 8. The iron calendar. Finally, I constructed my calendar around compounding energy, not endless hustle. 3 focused workdays per week, 90-minute work sprints, daily performance reviews, weekly scorecard tracking, business KPIs, Friday strategic thinking, time complete disconnection on weekends. This kept me fresh, sharp, and highly effective. Ironically, revenue doubled while hours dropped. By month 12, here was the reality. Revenue greater than $250,000, annualized 20 to 25 hours of work weekly, client success rates increasing, monthly stress decreasing, monthly zero ads, zero debt, minimal team. In part 5, I will now break down how this exact architecture can be replicated in any market, and how people repeatedly trap themselves chasing complexity instead of executing simplicity at elite levels. Because 6 figures is not the final destination. It's the foundation of sustainable wealth. The most common mistake I see after people hit their first 6 figures is that they try to scale by copying what others are doing at 7 or 8 figures. They start layering on funnels, teams, complicated launches, endless offers, complicated CRM systems, tech stacks they barely understand, and marketing tactics they've seen in some guru's YouTube ad. And very quickly, their business becomes fragile, bloated, and mentally exhausting. Revenue might rise for a moment, but profit collapses. Margin dies. Stress compounds. And ironically, they end up making less money with more clients and more work. The key to scaling a 6-figure business into true wealth is not to add layers, it's to refine layers. You scale wealth by simplifying complexity, not adding to it. Simplicity compounds. Complexity eventually collapses. At this level, I built a rule I call the control principle. If a system adds revenue but reduces my control, I don't build it. Control doesn't mean doing everything myself. Control means maintaining decision clarity, cash flow simplicity, operational flexibility, and personal bandwidth as revenue grows. The first phase of applying this principle starts with offer control. At 6 figures, you don't need 5 offers. You need one dominant offer, engineered with extreme clarity. One audience, one problem, one promise, one delivery system, one price point, one clear result. The sharper the offer, the faster the growth. I often see people creating new offers every time they feel a revenue plateau. But 90% of plateaus aren't caused by offer exhaustion. They're caused by marketing fatigue or operational inefficiency. Every quarter, I reviewed my flagship offer and asked, where are clients getting stuck? Where am I overcomplicating delivery? Where can I create faster transformations? Where can I build self-serve systems that reduce my personal touch points? This constant refinement allowed my offer to get better, more profitable, and less stressful every 90 days, even as volume grew. The second phase of applying control is audience filtering. At 6 figures, volume obsession is dangerous. I stopped trying to build a massive audience. I focused on building a high-filtered audience. This means my content became extremely polarizing, clear about who I serve, who I don't. My free content solved one problem at a time, fully, with zero fluff. My lead capture systems filtered unqualified leads automatically. By the time someone entered my world, they were hyper-aligned to my offer. My list didn't need to be big. My audience was small but deeply invested. I built value density, not vanity metrics. The third control lever is acquisition simplicity. Instead of playing the ever-shifting ad platform game, I built 3 simple inbound machines: consistent weekly long-form content, YouTube and podcast style, repurposed micro-content feeding organic reach, Instagram Reels, Shorts, TikTok, simple weekly authority email broadcasts. This created asymmetric inbound momentum. Each content piece had one clear CT leading to my offer pipeline. No complex webinar funnels. No crazy upsells. No endless remarketing layers. Just clear, consistent messaging driving attention into a simple application-based sales process. The fourth leverage point is sales process control. I structured my sales model for high close rates with zero pressure. Every prospect moved through 1. Lead magnet 2. Application 3. Short pre-call training video 4. Qualifying call. By the time they spoke to me or my sales assistant, they were already pre-sold. Instead of convincing, we simply verified fit and guided enrollment. My close rate stabilized at 85% plus with minimal sales resistance. Because the system did the heavy lifting before I ever spoke to anyone. The fifth layer of control is fulfillment optimization. I engineered client success around 3 pillars: self-paced curriculum, fully documented IP, weekly live coaching, scaling my interaction across groups, community peer support, creating accountability and retention. This allowed me to serve more clients while preserving personal time. Most importantly, client results improved as the system matured. Because client success is the ultimate marketing engine. Every new win became content, proof, referrals, and trust. The sixth principle of control is cash flow stability. Rapid growth kills many entrepreneurs financially because they confuse revenue with profit. I followed a very aggressive cash management rule. 50% of net profit moved into a protected wealth account monthly, 25% reinvested into growth systems, 15% held in operating buffer, 10% allocated for personal lifestyle. This allowed me to grow income while never becoming hostage to operational expenses. I could pause acquisition for months without financial strain. Cash flow stability is the real freedom most people miss while chasing revenue. The seventh and most powerful principle is calendar ownership. No six-figure transformation is sustainable if you lose control of your time. I built my entire business around time block architecture. Deep work mornings, client delivery afternoons, strategic thinking Friday mornings, zero work evenings or weekends. Revenue rose. Time demand shrank. Decision fatigue disappeared. Because as you scale, your brain becomes your most valuable asset. Protecting cognitive energy becomes more important than any single tactic. By the end of year one, my six-figure business had transformed into $250,000 plus predictable annualized income, 25-hour work weeks, 80% client success rate, fully documented delivery systems, 90% automated backend, 10% manual decision involvement, zero advertising dependency, zero debt or financial pressure. This wasn't hustle. This was engineered leverage simplicity. And yet, even at this level, I could see the next ceiling approaching. Because scaling from multiple six figures to seven figures is a very different game. It's no longer about building revenue. It's about building wealth infrastructure that sustains your empire indefinitely. Reaching six figures is a psychological shift. Sustaining it is operational mastery. But transforming it into seven figures and beyond? That demands an entirely different blueprint, one most never even attempt to study. This isn't about more clients, more work, or more platforms. This is about stepping into wealth infrastructure thinking. Because at this level, income isn't your asset anymore. Your systems, structures, and decisions become your real asset base. I call this phase the founder wealth transition. If you approach it like you approached your first six-figure climb, you will fail. Because the rules change entirely. The leverage becomes deeper, quieter, and more dangerous to execute wrong. Step 1. Replace income obsession with asset multiplication. At six figures, you think in terms of, how much revenue did I make this month? At seven figures, that question becomes irrelevant. The question becomes, how much cash flow can I safely extract while simultaneously compounding my machine's durability? You stop chasing high revenue months. You chase stable systems that produce consistent monthly recurring revenue, protect your personal time, generate increasing client results, build external wealth outside your business. Revenue spikes are irrelevant if your systems can't sustain. This is why so many hit seven figures for 1 year and collapse the next. They overbuild revenue at the expense of resilience. Step 2. Build the automated client engine. At six figures, your audience is semi-organic. At seven, you build an actual acquisition machine. That includes evergreen webinars, long-form SEO content, repurposed short-form videos, strategic collaborations with aligned partners, affiliate or referral partners, scaling audience reach. The machine runs with minimal founder energy. My personal involvement in client acquisition at seven figures was less than 5 hours weekly. Every lead that entered my world passed through pre-framing, education, filtering, and qualified enrollment sequences, automated but highly personal. When done correctly, this engine produces consistent lead flow indefinitely without exhausting ad budgets or burning out content creation. Step 3. Evolve into the scalable delivery framework. You stop running delivery. You engineer delivery. Here's how my seven-figure client journey looked. Tier 1, core offer. Automated curriculum plus group coaching support plus community accountability. Tier 2, Master Me. ND, private mastermind for scaling clients, facilitated by trained advisors. Tier 3, private advisory. Highest tier, reserved for minimal select clients directly with me. Most client delivery occurred without my direct 1:1 involvement. I spent 80% of delivery time optimizing systems, training coaches, refining curriculum, improving accountability mechanisms. The delivery machine no longer depended on my real-time presence. Step 4. Engineer the executive core team. The team structure shifts dramatically. 1 operations director, 1 client success manager, 1 marketing coordinator, 1 administrative assistant, 1 sales closer. This is the 5-person 7-figure team that sustains operational stability without bloating staff costs. Every role operates inside tightly documented SOPs. Founder involvement becomes high-level leadership, not daily operations. Step 5. Implement financial wealth protocols at 7 figures. Your income becomes dangerous if unmanaged. I followed a 3-account protocol. Operations holds 3 months of full business operating expenses at all times. Growth fund reinvests into acquisition, team, and systems as needed. Extraction tax-efficient personal wealth extraction into non-business investments. Every dollar not needed for growth was moved off-platform into index funds, real estate, private lending opportunities, long-term wealth instruments. Your business becomes the generator. Your external portfolio becomes the stabilizer. Step 6. Protect time as your primary asset at 7 figures. The only asset that truly limits your scale is founder time. I built the iron boundary calendar. 3 active work days per week, 4 complete offline days, strict weekly leadership meetings, 0 reactive client involvement, dedicated strategic thinking time blocks. The fewer decisions you make, the sharper your decision quality becomes. Step 7. Build founder optionality. Finally, you design the business to function with 0 founder delivery obligations, 0 founder sales involvement, 0 founder operational micromanagement. You move into strategic oversight mode. Weekly KPI reviews, quarterly team calibration, biannual vision realignment. At this point, the business becomes a sovereign wealth vehicle, not a personal job. The founder becomes the architect of scalability, not its operator. Summary of wealth infrastructure transformation. Income consistency exceeds volatility. Clients ascend, not churn. Cash flow stability outpaces revenue obsession. Delivery quality increases as client volume grows. Founder time contracts as business complexity expands. External wealth compounds outside the business. Business value becomes an acquirable, sellable asset. This is the secret behind those few entrepreneurs you see scaling rapidly without collapse. They aren't lucky. They're executing principles most never even study. The most dangerous part of growth isn't failure. The most dangerous part is partial success. Because once revenue crosses into multiple 6 figures and starts sniffing 7, many entrepreneurs believe they've cracked the code. They loosen discipline. They relax structures. They allow complexity to creep in under the disguise of growth. And what starts as healthy momentum silently evolves into operational fragility. The tragedy is not scaling too fast, it's scaling blind. The mistakes at this stage aren't random. They're predictable. And if you don't identify and engineer around them early, you will either plateau or implode. Here's how I avoided the collapse cycle that traps so many at the 7-figure doorway. Mistake 1. Founder dependency reemergence. Most founders unintentionally reinsert themselves into the business once revenue grows. They take back client coaching because clients request them personally. They step back into sales calls because close rates drop. They remanage contractors to fix quality issues. And slowly, the machine becomes founder-dependent again. I called this the hero trap. The business starts treating you like a hero. But heroes don't scale, systems do. Every time I was tempted to step back in, I asked, is this fixing a system failure or feeding my ego? If the system needed fixing, I redesigned it. If my ego needed stroking, I rejected the temptation. Mistake 2. Product line expansion too soon. Once revenue stabilizes, the market presents you with endless product opportunities. Memberships, certifications, events, done-for-you services, masterminds, low-ticket courses. The temptation is to chase all of them. But each new product fractures Your marketing focus, your operational simplicity, your client experience flow, your delivery bandwidth. Simplicity scales faster than complexity. Instead, I operated on product ascension timing, core offer. Dominant for 12 months minimum. Ascension offer, only after core client base hits 40% capacity. Ancillary offers, built only after back-end delivery is fully systemized. I refused to split attention until I knew my primary machine was bulletproof. #mistake 3. Team bloat without profit expansion. Many hire aggressively once revenue spikes. Multiple assistants, full-time coaches, marketing teams, sales teams, middle management. Revenue rises, but profit collapses under bloated salaries. Revenue feeds your ego. Profit feeds your wealth. I maintained lean scaling discipline. Contractors before full-time hires. Clear profit per employee benchmarks. Full ownership of key leadership roles until proven stability. My rule: no hire should exist unless revenue covers 3x their costs predictably. #mistake 4. Operational stack complexity. Tech tools explode. CRMs, calendar schedulers, funnel software, analytics, dashboards, client portals. Each tool adds new learning curves, potential failure points, management overhead. You don't need more tools. You need fewer tools used better. I streamlined my stack ruthlessly. One CRM, one payment processor, one client portal, one email platform, one booking system. Minimal tech. Maximum clarity. Zero fragility. #mistake 5. Cash flow starvation. When revenue rises, lifestyle inflation follows. Bigger homes, luxury cars, high-end vacations, private masterminds, irresponsible tax avoidance. Suddenly cash flow evaporates. At 7 figures, lifestyle becomes your enemy if undisciplined. I engineered the wealth lock protocol. 50% of personal net extracted was automatically invested monthly. No lifestyle purchase exceeded 10% of liquid cash reserves. Tax liabilities prepaid quarterly to eliminate surprise burdens. The discipline here preserved liquidity through every growth phase. #mistake 6. Loss of calendar control. With scale comes external demands. Media appearances, client requests, speaking invitations, podcast interviews, partnership proposals. Each one seems valuable, but they fracture calendar integrity. Time is your only non-renewable asset. I implemented the iron calendar doctrine. No meetings before noon. No more than 10 total calls weekly. No reactive client work allowed on Fridays. 4 full weeks per year completely offline. Any request outside core business function equals default no. Time control equals mental clarity equals wealth sustainability. #mistake 7. Leadership abdication. Many founders confuse delegation with abdication. They fully hand off. Financial oversight, client experience reviews, strategic vision setting, brand positioning decisions, and slowly lose awareness of their own empire's stability. I maintained weekly signal reviews. Core KPI dashboards, client progress reports, financial liquidity snapshots, team leadership scorecards. You cannot outsource final responsibility for your empire's direction. Leaders lead even when systems operate. #mistake 8. Delusional revenue forecasting. Growth feels inevitable at this level. Forecasts become emotional instead of data-driven. People project. 2x revenue every quarter, scaling every product simultaneously, funding team growth on imagined revenue instead of real revenue. This creates cash strain, operational pressure, emotional exhaustion. I forecasted every quarter on worst case, conservative case, aggressive case, and ran decisions off conservative models only. This created zero financial panic, even when markets dipped. #mistake 9. Brand drift. As scale builds, so does audience diversity. Requests for new niches, expanded services, broader topics. Brand dilution kills positioning power. I enforce core market domination. One audience, one identity, one promise, one reputation. Depth beats breadth. Market leadership beats generic mass appeal. Mistake 10. Identity collapse. The most forbidden mistake happens silently. The founder's identity fails to keep up with the empire's growth. They self-sabotage via imposter syndrome, overwork to feel valuable, guilt over lifestyle upgrades, fear of losing relevance. This creates internal sabotage behaviors. Over-delivery, constant reinvention, unnecessary expansion, relentless self-comparison. I countered this via identity alignment audits, quarterly recalibration of personal values, psychological coaching support, inner circle feedback, relentless detachment from external comparisons. The only war you fight at 7 figures is inside your own mind. #The forbidden conclusion. Most entrepreneurs fail at scale because they never study how wealth really compounds. They chase excitement instead of mastery. They expand revenue while shrinking margin. They build teams while losing control. They grow audiences while diluting positioning. They chase visibility while abandoning internal peace. The true game is controlled, quiet, compounding power, not chaotic public expansion. At this point, you must fully understand. Income is not wealth. Revenue is not freedom. Even a 7-figure business is not financial sovereignty. Most entrepreneurs confuse the machine that generates cash with the machine that creates wealth. One builds cash flow. The other builds independence. The true architects, the ones who control their wealth decades into the future, operate above their business. They construct a personal sovereign wealth engine. Let's break down exactly how this operates, because very few ever even glimpse this playbook. #The transition point. Once your business stabilizes into consistent 6- and 7-figure revenue with margin, you face a crossroads. Option 1. Keep reinvesting everything into business growth, always chasing higher top-line numbers. Option 2. Extract controlled profit streams into external wealth structures, creating permanent sovereignty. The amateurs stay trapped inside their business cash flow cycles. The architects extract while their business compounds. I chose the second path. The extraction model. Every month, I executed the same formula. Determine operating profit after expenses, taxes, and buffers. Extract 40% to 50% of net profit into personal wealth accounts. Maintain 6 to 12 months of business operational reserves inside company accounts. Limit business reinvestment only to systems, not vanity expansion. This allowed the business to continue growing, while my personal liquidity expanded independently. #The sovereign wealth structure. Once extracted, capital was deployed into diversified asset classes completely separate from the business. Cap 1. Cash reserves. Liquidity control. 12 to 18 months of personal living expenses held in low volatility accounts. Absolute psychological stability, regardless of business swings. Cap 2. Index funds, market exposure. Broad-based ETFs providing exposure to global equity growth. Automated monthly dollar cost averaging. Zero speculation. Zero active trading. Cap 3. Private lending and notes. Short-term, collateralized private lending opportunities with trusted operators. Predictable 8% to 12% returns outside market volatility. Cap 4. Real estate. Cash flow and appreciation. Small portfolio of stable, low-maintenance rental properties. Fully managed, fully leveraged with conservative debt ratios. Tax advantages. Compounding long-term wealth preservation. Cap 5. Alternative assets. Low allocation, high asymmetry, limited exposure to private equity or asymmetric angel investments. Only with money I can fully afford to lose. #The tax efficiency layer. The wealthiest founders don't just build income. They control tax liability with surgical precision. S-corp structures reducing self-employment taxes. Strategic retirement contributions maximizing deductions. Real estate depreciation offsets reducing taxable income. Multi-entity structures segmenting income types. Proactive quarterly tax planning with elite advisors. You don't avoid taxes illegally. You structure tax velocity legally. Every dollar saved via tax optimization compounds into future asset control. #The privacy shield. At this level, privacy becomes wealth protection. LLCs and holding companies separate personal and business ownership. Personal assets placed under trust structures for legal insulation. Public brand separated from personal identity layers. The less public your wealth visibility becomes, the more secure your sovereignty remains. #The calendar. Freedom shift. Wealth buys one thing above all: decision optionality. By year 3, my calendar had transformed. 2 to 3 intentional workdays per week, 20 hours maximum on high-leverage business strategies, 0 reactive obligations, complete disengagement possible without revenue collapse, quarterly offline sabbaticals. My business served my life, not the reverse. #The dynasty perspective. The final evolution is psychological. Most operators still chase more revenue, more exposure, more vanity numbers. The architects shift into dynasty building, quiet, controlled expansion. Generational wealth transfer plans, family trust structures, legacy giving structures. 0 public ego games. The game is not to be seen. The game is to be sovereign. #The forbidden truth. Most entrepreneurs build income engines that still own them. They remain employees, even inside 7-figure businesses. They never engineer the system that allows true freedom. Wealth infrastructure demands relentless personal financial discipline, strategic extraction timing, extreme operational simplicity, 0 emotional expansion driven by public image. The world rewards the loud. Sovereignty rewards the disciplined. By the time income is stabilized, systems are built, wealth extraction is happening, and external control is secured, you would think the battle is won. But the highest level of failure happens here, not because of external factors, but because of internal collapse. The mind becomes the final battlefield. Not poverty. Not competition. Not even the business. When you transition from survival to stability, a dangerous vacuum forms. The daily urgency that once fueled you is gone. The fear of not making it fades. The external markers of success, income, status, recognition, arrive. And now your brain searches for new threats to solve, often inventing problems to replace the ones you've already conquered. This is the wealth sabotage loop. Let me take you into the psychology few ever address. Because almost no one dares speak of it publicly. The loss of the struggle identity. Most entrepreneurs unknowingly attach their identity to the climb. The grind, the hustle, the struggle, the survival story, the badge of resilience. When that struggle disappears, many feel a terrifying emptiness. They unconsciously destabilize their systems to reintroduce familiar struggle. You'll hear phrases like, "I feel restless. I need a new challenge. I'm bored. Maybe I should pivot." And suddenly they start launching unnecessary new offers, entering unfamiliar markets, expanding teams aggressively, taking on risky investments, overcomplicating simple systems. They create volatility to regain the internal stimulation struggle once provided. The comparison poison at stability. New enemies emerge, comparing to other founders scaling faster, chasing media attention to feel relevant, measuring against 7- and 8-figure influencers, craving bigger stages. Comparison fractures peace. The empire you built feels insufficient against the moving target of external validation. Ironically, these comparison loops often trigger self-sabotage disguised as ambition. The quiet guilt syndrome. Many founders begin feeling guilt for outpacing peers, for enjoying freedom others don't have, for earning more than their family ever did, for stepping out of active work while others still grind. This guilt expresses through overcompensating generosity, reluctance to enjoy personal wins, subconscious sabotage of growth stability, unnecessary reinvolvement in daily operations. Guilt dissolves sovereignty when left unchecked. The control addiction. Some founders fear losing relevance. They reinsert themselves into decisions their team handles fine. They micromanage processes they systemized years ago. They monitor dashboards obsessively. They react to minor fluctuations emotionally. This is founder codependency. Control feels safe, but it's poison to sustainable autonomy. The lifestyle expansion trap. With wealth comes access. Luxury homes, private travel, designer status, exotic investments. If unchecked, lifestyle expands faster than wealth compounds. You see entrepreneurs financing unsustainable homes, burning cash on depreciating assets, feeling pressure to maintain public appearances. The problem isn't buying nice things. The problem is lifestyle velocity outpacing cash flow velocity. Wealth buys freedom when lifestyle remains controlled. It buys chains when ego fuels spending. Hashtag the sovereignty ceiling at this stage. Freedom is no longer external. You have wealth. You have systems. You have calendar control. The final enemy is your own mind's inability to sit in still power. Few can handle the absence of urgent fires, the silence of sustainable stability, the vacuum of no longer needing to fight. They mistake peace for boredom. They misinterpret stillness as stagnation. True sovereignty is emotional mastery over the void. Hashtag the forbidden internal work. Here's the work most refuse to do: deep identity recalibration without external markers. Psychological separation between worth and income. Detachment from comparison cycles. Re-engineering purpose beyond personal gain. Investing into long-term legacy creation instead of short-term stimulation. I built internal rituals. Quarterly solitude strategy retreats. Daily detachment meditation blocks. Annual vision recalibration resets. Trusted mentor counsel for blind spot detection. Aggressive pruning of unnecessary noise and exposure. Power compounds quietly when you no longer need more to feel valuable. Hashtag the true final game at this stage. You must finally swear. Who am I when I no longer need to climb? What purpose governs me beyond more revenue? What am I building beyond my own consumption? Can I live in still, quiet autonomy without self-sabotaging my peace? These are not business questions. These are dynasty architecture questions. This entire journey started with the ambition to reach 6 figures in half a year. But as we arrive here, you've seen the deeper truth. 6 figures is not the goal. 6 figures is only the doorway. Behind that door is the game few even recognize exists: the architecture of generational sovereignty. While the world chases the next launch, the next ad campaign, the next viral hack, those who truly master this game build something far more dangerous: a dynasty. A private, sovereign ecosystem that operates above market volatility, above public attention, and above external control. Let me now reveal how this architecture is constructed and preserved. Hashtag the rule of phases. Wealth has seasons. Every empire builder must understand there are distinct seasons to wealth. Phase 1. Skill accumulation. You build marketable compound skills that attract attention and solve problems profitably. Phase 2. Cash flow construction. You engineer simple leverage offers with scalable delivery systems producing consistent revenue. Phase 3. Asset extraction. You systematically pull profit from the business into personal wealth structures outside operational risk. Phase 4. Stability engineering. You reduce personal time investment while compounding delivery, acquisition, and retention systems through team delegation and automation. Phase 5. Sovereign portfolio construction. You deploy extracted capital into diversified, low-fragility external assets that operate independently of the business cycle. Phase 6. Dynasty structuring. You build legal, tax, and trust infrastructures to protect, preserve, and transfer wealth beyond your own lifetime. Most entrepreneurs barely complete Phase 2. Architects engineer all 6. Hashtag the triad of empire control. At the top level, your entire empire revolves around 3 interdependent systems. Keycap 1. Cash flow machine. The business generates capital, operates, simply requires minimal active founder involvement. Keycap 2. Wealth reservoir. The personal portfolio preserves extracted capital, produces stable, passive growth, diversifies income streams. Keycap 3. Legal fortress. The protection system shields assets from taxation, litigation, and collapse, ensures multi-generational transfer. Security reduces public exposure. When these 3 layers are constructed and stabilized, you exit reactive business cycles forever. Hashtag the final lever. Time sovereignty. At this stage, income and wealth serve one purpose: the permanent, unbreakable control of your calendar. You wake when you choose. You work if you desire. You scale only when vision compels you. You build only what fuels long-term purpose. Time no longer equals revenue. Time equals legacy design. Hashtag the Dynasty Rulebook. This is where you finally operate by the forbidden rules almost no entrepreneur studies. Never build systems that require daily founder emotion. Never allow revenue expansion to outpace delivery quality. Never take capital risks that jeopardize lifestyle stability. Never confuse public growth with private sovereignty. Never expand team size beyond operational necessity. Never allow external comparison to dictate internal decisions. Never chase more when better is already compounding. Never expose full financial visibility to the public. Never violate the calendar integrity rule, peace before scale. Hashtag the legacy question. At this point, you no longer ask, how much can I make? You ask, what intellectual capital can I transfer to my children? What tax-protected structures will preserve this for 100 years? What global diversification shields me from sovereign instability? What charitable structures allow my empire to shape causes I believe in? What operating manual will guide this machine after I'm gone? Income fades. Legacy compounds. Hashtag the final truth. The six-figure transformation you wanted is not an income target. It's an identity shift. You are no longer an operator. You are no longer a business owner. You are an architect. You design machines. You design wealth vehicles. You design sovereign, permanent freedom. And you do it quietly. Because the loud seek attention. But the sovereign seek control.